So the next thing we want to look at is statuses. So if everyone can open up their statuses icon. And this is definitely something that we really encourage our long-time users to take advantage of. When I look at some of the people in the room who I know, who I help with their integrations or work with their business partner on some of them, I know how much they're using the statuses to control their workflow. When I look at my older customers who've had the software before this part of the feature was upgraded, they don't really use the statuses the way that they should be, and they can certainly take a lot of advantage of that. So the statuses were introduced, I don't know, I think it was 2014, so a good 5 versions ago. And what they enable you to do is obviously, all of the documents have a status about them. So a job can be open, closed, ready for invoicing, whatever the statuses that you create are. Quotes can be the same, sales can be the same, that sort of thing. They can all have their own statuses. Now, what we added in that version a while ago was the ability to control how those statuses work and what you can do within those statuses. So I'll get everybody to load up their first status and we'll go through the screen, and then I'll talk about the ways that you might be able to do that. So for me, it's pending. So there's no actual finder here. So I just press the first icon. That's the first, telling me to load the first record, and click go. I could, of course, use the search here to find it if I want to, but I can just press first and go. For me, that is pending. So we're going to go through these fields. I'll explain what they all are, and then I'll talk a little bit more about how you might use this to control your workflow. So this one here is pending. This is my status. I call this what I want. So this could be ready to start. It could be whatever you want it to be. The system will have generated, when you installed it, pending, active, held, closed, and completed. It generates 5 for you, but of course you can delete them. You can create your own new ones, whatever the case may be. It is active, so we're using it. The next one here is the state. Now this is the overriding state of what the document is in, and it doesn't matter what any of the other settings that you do. If they conflict with the state wins. In other words, if it's marked as complete, if its document is complete, I can do nothing to the document. So even if I go in and say when the document is in this status, I can invoice, I cannot. If the state is complete, that's the #1 thing, okay? So open means I can do everything. Closed means it doesn't have any restrictions. It's basically the same as open, but the idea is that it's closed from a technician point of view and still going for a financial point of view. Complete, I can do nothing to the job or document except for reopen it, so uncomplete, or add notes. That's it. That's all I can do. And held means I can do everything, but I cannot post. There's no way to post a held document, okay? It will not allow you to. None of the processing tools, no macros, nothing. It will not post. All right, in the next section here, I can determine when I'm using pending, which of the document types can I do this on? So that's one of the big first changes from the old version, is now you can have different statuses for different records. So quotes can have different statuses than jobs. Sales can have different statuses than quotes, all right? And you're able to set up different sets of statuses for your different types. So in my case, pending is available for everything except for warranty agreements and recurring jobs. These next two here are important. The first one is change the status after posting. So imagine you have a scenario where you have a status called ready to post, and everybody's finalizing all their bits and pieces, POs are being finalized, technicians have done their work, all that sort of stuff, and eventually somebody moves it into that ready to posting. That goes to somebody's desk that checks everything before they raise the invoice, and really once the invoice is done, the job is complete. If that was the case, you could preset that up to say basically every time I do a posting, when it's this status, automatically move it to complete. So I don't have to turn that on every time, it'll just do it for me. The next one I'm going to come back to because I need to explain some of the other features before this one will make sense. If we move over to the Actions tab, we have what actions are enabled when the job, quote, sale, whatever it is in this status. Again, none of the options here override the state. If it was complete, it doesn't matter what is in here, you can't do anything. But if it's not complete and it's open, I can copy, I can edit my phases, equipment, billing, tasks, services, items, and I can do purchase orders. However, I cannot invoice, I cannot create cost-only documents, and I cannot credit. So no user will be able to do that. If a job or a sale or an agreement is in the pending status in my system, I will not be able to post it. So I'm able to really control what can happen when a job is at a certain status. I might have a status called all parts received. At that point, I don't allow purchase orders. So I could take the ability to add purchase orders at that point, and nobody would be able to add another purchase order. At that point, it would have to move back to another status, which I may have audited, so I can see who moved it to try to track why they added a new PO. So you can start seeing how this can really control, and we haven't even finished yet, what you can do, what users can do when things are in different statuses. The next one is who is able to change to this status. Now, pending might not have any user restrictions, but imagine complete. I might say only Fred and Steve are able to mark a job as complete. That would mean they are the only two users that can move a job into complete. They're the people that need to check everything was done, all the billing was finalized, there was appropriate GP, whatever, before they can complete a job. And the last one is when I'm in pending, what statuses can I go to? So if I'm in pending, I'm able to move to active, to customer complete, et cetera, but I cannot go directly from pending to closed or pending to complete. So I'm able to set up a workflow of where, A goes to B, goes to C, but only Fred can move it from C to D. And when it's in D is the only place I'm allowed to invoice. So you can start seeing how you can completely control based on your workflow, who, when, what, and where. So common questions is, can I uncomplete a job? Yes, you create a status called uncomplete, reopen, whatever you want to call it. And you say, when I'm incomplete, I can move to uncomplete. I could then make only the admin user be able to uncomplete a job. So you can really start to see that you can control how some of these things happen by using this status workflow and the user security around it. Yep. There's not a report, but if you go back to the first page here, you can actually test it. So I could say A and B here and click test, and I'll see what the result is for A and B if they were using this record. All right. The report would be, there's no way in Crystal to calculate that because it's running logic in the background. Crystal just wouldn't be able to do that. So, I mean, you've got to remember that one, it's let's call it non-destructive in the sense that the idea is if somebody can't do something because you didn't set it up right, then they can't do it, right? So the worst that's going to happen is they're going to come to you and say they can't do it. When we're in the document, you can double click on a status and it will tell you exactly what it can do when it's in that status, so you understand what you're missing out on or what you don't have access to. But there is no report to show you who has what access. So let me talk about this last option here, because it's a really good way of highlighting what you can use this system for. So Service Manager supports credit checking, right? We integrate with accounts receivable credit. We understand when a customer is in credit hold. We understand all of that information, and we can stop invoicing happening when credit is happening. If a user goes to click an invoice button on a job and the customer's in credit default, they get a username and password field if they don't have the security to override credit. And the idea would be that they would say, hey, Fred, can you go in and invoice this for me? What we wanted to do was integrate that with the status system to make that a little bit easier. So I'll draw it out on the board. So imagine a job is in ready to invoice. Okay, and it's job 1. I'll just put J1 there. And, Sharon goes in and tries to invoice it, and she gets a credit block. And she doesn't have the ability to approve credit because it's just not her role. So she can change the status. We've marked ready to invoice to be able to go to both complete or needs credit approval. So she changes the status to needs credit approval. Now we've set up in the software that needs credit approval can only go to approved or denied. And we mark approved with this, auto approve. And then we say only Fred can do this. So now what happens is Sharon goes to invoice her job and it tells her that it's a credit check and she doesn't have the security to do that. So rather than having to go to Fred's desk, he might be in a different office, a different state, whatever the case may be. All she does is move it into this status here, needs credit. Every day he gets a report of them, he runs document query, whatever it is, and he gets notified that a new job has dropped into needs credit approval. He opens it up, he reviews, calls the customer, does whatever it is that he does, right? That's his process, and he determines that it's approved. He moves it into this status, which Sharon now has access to that status, and she can open it up and now invoice it because it went through the status that auto-approved the credit. So nobody had to go to anybody's desk. It went through a defined workflow process that everybody was able to put their piece into as it went, and Sharon was able to finish and invoice the job. So you can see how by using the statuses and who gets to set which statuses and the way, status can move from this status to that status, you can completely control that kind of process in your business to make sure that it's done correctly. Okay? And because we have auditing, and status is one of the fields you can audit, you're able to audit who changed the status, the date and time, what it went from, what it went to, so you can see that audit trail as well.